Hello, my friends. Thank you once again for joining us on this Wednesday. We do this program on Kardec Radio right here where you are. It's called Spiritism, a closer look. So we do this every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. So here we are, Luiz Lima here, today broadcasting from Orlando, Florida. And in this program, we are going to take a closer look at brain, mind, and spirit. It's a subject that requires some definitions. Mind is this thing not very well black and white defined because different people define in different ways. But for us, we need to follow what Spiritism tells us, because we are doing this program under the Spiritist view. So let's see how we can define these three things: brain, mind, and spirit, and how they interact with each other. So, first thing to consider is we are multidimensional beings. That means we are simultaneously in more than one dimension. We are spirits, right, experiencing life in a physical body. So that right there is two dimensions, a dimension for the spirit and one for the physical life. So not only we are spirit and physical body, but we have a third, I'm going to say item for now, called perispirit, which provides the link between the two. Because spirit is not matter. There's nothing, matter in spirit. Physical body is only matter. So how can the two talk? There's got to be something in between. If you're in the in the recipes, that's what an emulsifier is used for, to join two things that are different in nature. So that's what it is. The perispirit is going to provide and sustain, not only provide but sustain this link between the spirit and the physical body. The mind is going to come a little later in the program. As we go along, it's going to be there at a point. So let's try to define brain first. Well, we know that brain is something physical. It's made of matter, cells and atoms and everything. So it's something that belongs in the material world, and only in the material world. So the definition of brain has to come from those who conduct studies on different forms of matter. And that is the science. So science is the one that's going to provide us the definition for brain, a general definition of what a brain is. So science defines the brain as the physical organ. So it's a physical organ to begin with, responsible for things like memory, vital functions, emotions, the biological control of the body. Those are some of the functions that the brain provides. So, it's the most important organ in the body because it controls all the others. And that's why it's so important. Now, as we advance in studying the field of neurosciences, we learn that the brain has some special aspects that before neurosciences we couldn't perceive, we didn't know. So, the scientific progress reveals things today that we had no idea whatsoever, say 50 years ago, let alone 200 years ago. So, first of all, what is neuroscience? So first things first, what exactly is neuroscience? Because we use this word a lot, it's out there. So let's try to put a definition to it. Neuroscience can be defined as the scientific study of the nervous system. Scientific studies, not like just biological, no. Scientific study of the nervous system. And the nervous system has components, brain, spine cord, peripheral nervous system. So that's what neuroscience studies. And like I said, with time, neuroscience was able to find a lot of interesting things. I'm just going to mention three of them really quick because, we're not here to study the brain in depth. We are here to understand the connection, brain, mind, and spirit. So I'm just going to talk about three things in the brain. First is a neuron. Neurons are basic elements in they're cells. They're basic cells in the brain that will carry the information. As we know, the information inside the brain is electricity. So it's, if you had when information needs to be passed through the brain from one part of the brain to another, whatever this is, it doesn't really matter where it goes to where it goes. Information has to be passed. So what happens is I'm going to just hold this thing here. So we're going to understand that this is one neuron. So this is one neuron. So electricity is going to pass from this side all the way through the cell to this end. In order to continue, you need another one of these. So what you do is, what the brain does is bring another neuron. So now we have a longer wire, if you understand this is a wire. And then after the second one, we put a third, then a fourth, then it goes all the way like this. And that's how this wire that transmits the information is formed. It's something on the fly. It's not preset. That's how the network of neurons, or also called a neural network, is formed. It's all on the fly. Now, one interesting thing is this. When this neuron here and this neuron here are going to join together to form the wire, as I said, wire in quotes, please. There's not really a touch here. They don't touch. Two neurons do not touch. What happens is they go so close, so close, so close that it looks like they are touching, but they are not. What happens is, in between these two neurons, something occurs, because the information has to cross over from one neuron to the next. And to pass that information from one neuron to the next, a phenomenon known as synapse takes place. So what happens is more or less like this. Here's one neuron. The information is here. It's going to cross. When it gets to the end of this, at the end of each neuron on both ends, it has some bags with chemical elements inside, chemical substances inside, little tiny bags. They're called synaptic vesicles. And we can have up to 72 of these at the ends of each neuron. When the electricity passes through and gets to the end of the neuron, it kind of disrupts and destroys and opens up those synaptic vesicles. So the liquid that is inside, the substance that is inside, leaks because the vesicle was open by the electricity. So it leaks. What happens? So now we have leaking elements here, leaking substances. The next neuron gets so close that the leaked substances from one neuron will go through, like if for easiness of understanding, like a sea of things. So it's like they swim, for using a very simple word for analogy. So they swim from the end of one neuron to the beginning of the next. That's what synapse is. When these chemical elements reach the next neuron, the neuron senses the chemicals and reassembles the electrical signal. Isn't that incredible? So Could be easy, right? Could be a straight through, but it's not. So you start electricity here, electricity, chemical elements, electricity, electricity, chemical elements, electricity, electricity. So the language in the brain is not really electricity only. It is two things: electricity through the neuron, but chemistry on the transition points, on the synapses. Well, that's something very interesting, because everything that is objective language, for example, say if I show you this, right, and I ask you, what is this? Everybody's gonna answer the same thing. It's a smartphone. Nobody's gonna say, no, this is a pen, this is a dog. No, it's very simple and objective. When the brain is used to answer objective questions, it uses the electricity through the neurons. Now, the same element here, the same object. So you told me it's a smartphone. And then I ask you, is this a nice phone? Well, now it became subjective, because some people are going to say very nice. Some other people are going to say, yeah, not so much. And some people are going to say, no, this is horrible. This is a, total disaster. So we have different opinions. Why? Because personal opinions use the chemistry of the synapses. And the chemistry in the synapses is very, very personal. It's not the same for everyone. And it's not the same within the same person from day to day. So, for example, today I can say, oh, I'm in a nice blue shirt, beautiful. Tomorrow, when I'm going to dress myself, I'm going to say, nah, I'm going to take maybe a red shirt today. And it's the same person. So we have these variations of, how we want to do things. So that opens up for something that is called, and that's the third item that I want to mention too, that neuroscience brings to us, something called brain plasticity. What is plasticity? It's the ability to change form. For example, if you go to the supermarket and you just take a bag, there's nothing in it, brand new bag, supermarket is providing to you. So you take that bag and I ask you, what is the form of this bag? And you're going to say, no, there's no form. It doesn't even make sense to ask that. Now, if you put a watermelon inside, now you have a form that is well defined. So I can say, oh, this plastic bag has the form of a watermelon. If you put a box in, it's also straightforward. This bag has the form of a box. So the bag has the ability to change according to the content. This is brain plasticity. The brain changes depending on the content. So we're getting to the content now. It's becoming more interesting. So when you look at the brain, before we go a little further, considering that the spirit is the intelligent principle of the universe, the spirit thinks. The spirit thinks. And the brain is merely the instrument through which thought manifests. The brain does not create thoughts. For thoughts to make their way into the material worlds, thoughts are generated by the spirit. For thoughts to make their way into the material world, the information has to be passed along from the spirit to the brain. And remember, between the spirit and the brain, we have the perispirit. However, before that information can be passed along, the information is the thought. Before that thought can be passed along to the physical body, to the brain, it has to be properly formatted. For example, Let's go by analogy. You want to speak something. You just want to say something, even if it's a simple good morning. Before the good morning gets the vibration of your vocal cords generate the sound of good morning, way before that, you have to organize your thoughts. What is to organize our thoughts? Oh, it's morning. I see this person. I'm going to say good morning for this person. This is way before you verbalize that. So the information is being prepared. So you have to organize your thoughts to prepare the vocal cords to vibrate accordingly. So the information has to be formatted in a way that it can be passed along to the brain through the perispirit. The process of organizing and formatting the information is done by the mind. So the mind uses the brain to express itself in the physical realm. The brain is nothing more than an instrument of expression. So now hold on. We brought a new word into the equation, mind. Can we define mind? Can we talk about a little bit? Sure, let's do it. Defining mind could be complicated depending on who is analyzing, who is studying, who is providing the definition. So we're going to stick, of course, within the Spiritist paradigm. Now, mind does not involve anything material. It has no molecules, it has no atoms, it has no cells, nothing like this. The mind is the faculty of manifestation of spiritual consciousness and manifestation of the spirit. The mind is a function of the spirit. It is not the spirit. It's a function of the spirit. So it is involved in things like thought, memory, will, imagination, feelings, reasoning. Those are functions that the mind is in charge of. The mind organizes the contents to be passed along, down the line, if you will, to the brain. The mind is the system that processes information according to what the spirit wants to happen. And the brain receives that. The brain buys what the mind sells. The brain is passive in that sense. Within the body, no, it's very dynamic, but it's passive in the sense that what do I do here? The brain organizes and translates these manifestations of the mind into the material life. The mind is still active, by the way, on discarnate spirits, but they don't have the physical part. They don't have the brain, but they do have a mind. They are still intelligent principles. So within the Spiritist paradigm, the mind is the mirror of the spirit's consciousness. It's the expression of the spirit's intelligence and will. Now remember, spirits are the intelligent beings of the universe. So through the mind, the spirit thinks, feels, creates, acts, using the perispirit to take the information down the line to the physical body. So the mind radiates this energy in the thought of forms and feelings. It irradiates. And it's not the purpose today, but it's also a nice and beautiful study how this happens in the perispirit. This is not for today. That's going to be another talk, another day. But how this irradiates, how thought irradiates, and how it impacts us. So these emanations attract like-minded beings because it irradiates something. So spirits that are able to capture that are those who are within the same vibrational frequency. It doesn't matter if they are discarnate or incarnate. That's called the law of affinity. So what the mind produces through the law of affinity will tell other spirits, discarnate or incarnate, what you are, what you think of, what you're doing at a certain point. So the mind is considered responsible for creating the spiritual environment around each person. So we create our own spiritual environment, nobody else. It's personal and not transferable because its origin is within us. The origin of all of this is not outside. It's within. Now, coming back a little bit, we spoke about plasticity, brain plasticity. So I think one of the questions is, how does the brain or the neuron know how to connect and create the neural network? Let me rephrase this. We know now that this neuron is going to join this one, and the information is going to pass through, and this network, this sequence of neurons is going to disappear after the information passes through. So what I'm asking here is, how does the brain know, or the neurons know, that it's time to join and it's time to disconnect? See, that decision cannot, absolutely not, be based on the neuron itself. There's got to be a superior layer, a command on a superior layer that this obeys to. The neurons by themselves are not able to do this because neurons are physical elements with no intelligence. They obey a command. Where is this command? That's what the mind is telling us. It's telling the brain. It's the mind that makes this thing happen. So sometimes the synapses are gonna have one particular outcome. On another day, maybe a couple hours later, the synapses are going to have a different outcome because my emotions are now different. I was thinking of something very, very, very nice, and I'm thinking of something very, very, very bad. So the change of heart that we say, right? So the change of mind will affect the synapses, and it will affect how this is conveyed to the brain. The brain organizes the impulses and translates into languages and actions. It's from this perspective, please understand what I'm saying. From this perspective, it's very passive. Once it receives the information, now that's a whole different story. Now it becomes very active, very dynamic. But it has to be commanded. It doesn't have this self-command. It doesn't. So what we think, meaning what the mind is going to bring over to the brain, what we think and feel shapes our perispirit, influences our physical body, our health. The mind molds images and forms. And this is going to be passed along to the brain to execute that of some form. So the brain, it coordinates the entire biology on the body, but it needs an input. The brain needs an input. It isn't self-surviving or self-sustaining better. It needs an input. It needs something telling the brain, do this, do that. That something is the spirit that generates thoughts on the mind, and then it goes through the perispirit to the physical body. So when you think about wellness, for example, what can we do to be healthier, to feel this, have this feeling of wellness? We have to be positive in our mental state has to be positive. We can do inner prayer, inner peace, charity work, love for others. This is all going to bring a mental state compatible with physical harmony. Physical harmony is not going to happen if my mind is throwing energies compatible with hatred, imbalance, resentment. This is going to imbalance the brain functions. And who's going to pay for that? Myself, my body. Not the person I have some sort of resentment with. Not that guy that I hate. No, it's just us. It's all within. So modern science already knows that's a fact. Nobody is going to argue on that anymore. Stress and negative emotions alter the neurotransmitters within the synapses, alters immunity and the quality of life. That's a known fact. So we should take the opportunity of being here, living this life on a physical body, to educate our mind so the brain expresses goodness, not evil things. Spiritist practices such as gospel at home, for example, prayers, studies, charity work, this is all great for us to maintain our balance. This is all very, very, very positive. This is going to help first us. When we do charity work, we help ourselves before we help the person who we're doing charity to. And because we are here and we will come back, each lifetime, each reincarnation is an opportunity to train the brain, to educate the mind, having evolution in mind. We want to get better. We want to advance morally. We want to advance intellectually. So if we keep looping on the same, whining and all of this, we're going to just stay put, stay stuck. So to wrap up, the brain is this gift, a divine gift. It's the instrument for the incarnate spirit to work on its evolutionary journey. So we must take care of our brain by providing and creating, generating good thoughts, healthy habits, being in line with goodness. We are immortal spirits. We use the brain temporarily on each incarnation. When we are discarnated, we don't have the physical brain. So we have to take the opportunity while we are incarnated, and on each subsequent incarnation, the ones that passed, they passed. We can't do anything about anymore. But, use the opportunity to train our brain for a better evolutionary journey experience. Thank you so much for joining us once again right here on Kardec Radio. Spiritism, a closer look. We'll come back next week at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Thanks so much. Be well.